Welcome, everyone. I'm Kimberly Charrington, and I would like to welcome each of you today on behalf of the National Institute for Deterrence Studies, otherwise known as NIDS, for tuning in to today's Huessy seminar, where the most important interaction is with you. NIDS is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides deterrence education by hosting live and virtual events like this, podcasts, publications on global security, as well as workshops and courses through our NIDS Academy, all in the interest of advancing peace and promoting stability through a strong national security and nuclear deterrent. You can see more of what we have to offer and get involved at thinkdeterrence.com. Please help us grow our membership and audiences by following us on LinkedIn, Rumble, and YouTube, as well as wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Our next virtual Huessy seminar will be held on April 25th, Strengthening Deterrence for the 21st Century, Missile Defense and a New Nuclear Arsenal for a New Era, with Bob Peters from the Heritage Foundation. On May 9th, we host Dr. Jim Howe as he talks about China and Russia, strategic and theater nuclear weapons, the 2044 forecast and potential U.S. responses. On May 23rd, Dr. Philip Carber will speak on strategic shifts with Russia's tactical nukes and China's theater nuclear expansion. And then Lieutenant Inbom Chung will be, Lieutenant General, Inbom Chung will be on June 13th, sharing his perspective on the implications for nuclear-armed South Korea. 2 live events we have coming up at the Capitol Hill Club in Washington, D.C. We hope you can attend if you're in town. May 16th, we have breakfast with Lieutenant General Andrew Jabara on the role of Sentinel and V-21. We have Uzi Rubin Live on June 27th, addressing the growing concerns of missile threats in the Middle East. You can look for an invitation in your inbox or go to thinkdeterrence.com to our events page to register for any of these events. You may also email me to get your colleagues on the guest list for future events. During our presentation today, we encourage you to write your questions in the chat box at any time. When we begin the Q&A portion of this presentation, one of us will read the question that you submitted. However, if you don't get your question answered, we'll be sure to send it to our speaker afterwards, and they will have the opportunity to separately message you. Or you can email us afterwards at nids@thinkdeterrence.com, and we will pass your questions along. If you like a question that someone posts, feel free to give it a thumbs up in the chat box so we can get those questions marked as priority. I want to introduce our host for today's seminar, Mr. Peter Huessy, President and Senior Director of Strategic Deterrence Studies at Geostrategic Analysis and a Senior Fellow here at NIDS. Peter?
Thank you very much, Kimberly, and I want to welcome all our guests here today. I particularly want to say hello to our friends from Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, TechSource. Also, shout out to Jim Kowalski, good friend and a former United States general officer who taught me a lot of what I know about ICBMs. So welcome. We're honored today to have Stacy Jo Huser, who is the Major General and head of the 20th Air Force out in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She also was previously Principal Deputy Administrator for Military Activities at the National Nuclear Security Administration. She has previous roles in legislative liaison as well as at Stratcom, and she's going to talk to us today about the 400 Minuteman missiles that we have out in 5 states, and which is a bulwark of our nuclear deterrent. So, Stacy Jo, if I may turn it over to you. I'm delighted you joined us. I want to thank you for taking this time. You have been a fixture in many of our events as well as our symposium. I should mention that on June 24th at Louisiana State University, we will hear again from the General, among others, including also General Bussier. We also have Admiral Weeks from SSBN office has agreed to come as long as they can get the travel restriction by that time. But at June 24th in Louisiana, Shreveport, we're having our 24th, I believe, Nuclear Symposium. So, Stacy Jo, it's an honor to have you here. I want to thank you on behalf of NIDS. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, sir. I'm going to start sharing some slides so that you all can look at that instead of my face. All right. Peter, can you tell me if you can see that?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Wonderful. So first of all, thank you so much to NIDS. Thank you so much to my dear friend Peter Huessy and Kimberly for letting me do this. What my plan is for this morning is to give you all kind of a state of the current ICBM enterprise. I'm not going to get too much into deterrence theory, strategy, anything like that. It is more of where are we right now across our ICBM force? What are we working on? What are our priorities? And then what are some of the modernization efforts that are underway? If you don't know much about this enterprise, I hope that I can teach you some things. If you know a lot, hopefully you will learn something new. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of my background. When I'm listening to a speaker, I always am curious, what gives them the authority to tell me whatever it is that they're telling me. So I'll tell you a little bit of my background. Like Mr. Huessy said, I was most recently before this job working at the Department of Energy at the National Nuclear Security Administration as a principal assistant deputy administrator for military application. And that is the general who is the liaison basically between the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. So it was an incredible position. Many of you dear friends who are watching, I got to know you in that role. So I'm very excited that I got to know you and that you're attending today. I have commanded at many different levels from the squadron, which is one of our smallest commands that you can have, all the way up to a group. And then I was the wing commander here at FE Warren in Cheyenne, and now I'm the 20th Air Force commander. As a 20th Air Force commander, I am responsible for over 13,000 airmen and civilians who provide our nuclear global strike and weapon sustainment for the ICBM force. So we operate, maintain, sustain, secure, so keep the system secure and defended across the entire ICBM force, which is, like Mr. Huessy said, it is spread out over 5 states to include Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, and then northern Colorado. We also have, and I'll show you in a later slide, Kirtland Air Force Base falls under me. The host base there, the host wing at Kirtland is the 377th, and they do nuclear support as well as host 108 mission partners on that base, which are familiar to many of you, mission partners like Sandia or DTRA, the Air Force Safety Center. So just 108 partners. It's an incredible mission. I'm super grateful that they fall under 20th Air Force. When I took command of 20th, many of you know it took me a while to take command because it was when Senator Tuberville had his holds on general officers. So I was very lucky that the Air Force sent me to 20th ahead of time, and I got to shadow the then Commander General Lutton and learn about the challenges that were facing 20th. So when I took command over a year ago, I knew immediately what I wanted to focus on. And for those of you who know me, these are probably no surprise. People, mission, modernization, and engagement. I'll start with mission. Mission is, my focus for mission is what do we need to do to sustain Minuteman III? As you all are probably aware, Sentinel is the replacement for Minuteman III. But with the Nunn-McCurdy breach, there have been delays to the program. So what do I need to do and what does my team need to do to ensure Minuteman III is safe, secure, reliable, effective, scary for the next however many years it needs to be until Sentinel comes fully online? Our modernization efforts, I will talk about a bit during this discussion. It is things like the new helicopter, it is supporting Sentinel, and it is a host of things that a lot of the American public wouldn't think about, like big white trucks that we depend on heavily. Engagement is something that I learned probably too late in my career. I wish I had learned to focus on engagement a lot sooner. That is the realization of all of our mission partners, many of you who have joined us this morning, and the role that those mission partners play in supporting our business, our ICBM force, and most importantly, our human beings who operate, maintain, sustain, defend that force. And then that leads me to my fourth priority, which is always people first. If I don't take care of the people who do this mission, ensure that they're supported, they feel valued, we invest in their development, and we ensure that their families are well taken care of, that their spouses and partners have jobs, that they have childcare, that they have health care. If we don't do that, none of the rest of this can happen. So those are my four priorities. As you all know, every time there's a new commander, they typically change what their priorities are. They change their mission statement. Those are mine. They also mirror my boss's priorities. So General Bussier, those are his same four priorities. He has different meaning behind each of his, but they are for the most part essentially the same. So our triad, again, hopefully you all are familiar with this. This is what we consider our nuclear triad. We have the air leg, which is our bomber force, the sea leg with our Navy SSBNs, and then I live in the land leg, which is our ICBM force. The ICBM mission is one of the most unique missions that we have in the Air Force. Although it's not often talked about, it is 1/3 of the nuclear linchpin to our entire military strategy. And the weight of this responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the amazing men and women who I have the honor of working alongside. I think the easiest way to showcase the incredible work of our airmen is to talk a little bit about what we've been tasked to do for the American people, what we need to do to make our current mission possible, and where we need to move forward to as we modernize our force. So I did talk a little bit about 20th Air Force when I introduced myself. Our mission in 20th Air Force is to defend the United States with combat-ready nuclear forces and on order conduct global strike. So what does that mean to all of you? So first and foremost, our force's lethality must be unquestionable. And we do that through continuous testing of our capabilities, through upgrades and enhancements to our current systems to ensure that our ability to conduct global strike remains evident. Our weapons also need to be safe for us to interact with and for our airmen to use. Our airmen must be able to properly transport and access these weapons without fear of accidents or incidents. And lastly, but not least, our system for preventing inadvertent or unauthorized use of these weapons is crucial, and it needs to be maintained to affirm the trust that the American people have placed on us and the promises that we have made to our allies. So taking these three aspects of our mission together, we're able to supply constant, unwavering readiness for any threat. By constantly calibrating our missiles and maintaining an active on-alert force 24/7, 365, we're applying a level of deterrence to our adversaries and creating a line in the sand upon which all other military operations may operate. We consider ourselves the backbone of every military operation the United States undertakes. Our real power with our ICBM force is not necessarily the payloads on top of the missiles, nor the incredibly fast response time, or the ability to retarget very quickly. Rather, it's what our airmen do every hour of every day. They supply a promise to our allies as well as our adversaries. We're organized, we're trained, and we're equipped to fight and protect at a moment's notice. So before we talk about how we are sustaining our current weapon system, I'm going to show you a little bit more about my sweet baby here, the Minuteman III. So this missile is truly a marvel of engineering. It was designed with 1960s technology, emplaced in the 70s with a planned service life of only 10 years. So it is incredibly inspiring for me to see after all these decades past when it was supposed to age out, it still performs its job, and it does it really well. Before I continue talking about this, the one thing I want to talk about is our alert rate. So the number of missiles that are on alert, ready to go at all times. And this is unclassified. So like Mr. Huessy said, because of the new START, we are limited to 400 launch facilities, each loaded basically with one Minuteman III and one warhead on each of those Minuteman IIIs. So we can have up to 400 missiles or a total of 400 warheads on alert. US Stratcom has a minimum number of that 400 that we need to maintain for their targeting needs to hold our adversaries at risk. On any given day, our alert rate ranges from between 97 to 99%. So on any given day, we only have a handful of missiles that are down for some type of maintenance need. And this is incredible when we're talking about a system from the 1970s that was only supposed to live for 10 years. But it is on the backs of our airmen that we're able to do that. There are airmen driving hundreds of miles every day, spending up to 12 hours in the missile field, making sure that these systems are maintained, they're fixed, they're loaded with warheads, they're on alert, there's no security problems, and that they're ready to go. So just an incredible alert rate. Again, every year that goes by, it takes more hours because these systems are understandably aging, and it is the airmen that do all of that. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox. Back to the missiles. So our missiles have a range of roughly 7,000 miles. They have very fast launch times, incredibly accurate considering how far they travel to their intended target. And our portion of the nuclear deterrent supplies several unique benefits. So we're the most cost-effective part of the nuclear triad, which Mr. Huessy talks about quite often, as well as the most resilient and most responsive. Not only do we fill many of the needs of the military for a land-based deterrent, but an attack on our missile fields, when you consider how far around the country they are spread and how far apart each launch facility is from another launch facility, it complicates our adversaries' planning and it assures our allies of our commitment to protect the free world. The Minuteman III weapon system was truly ahead of its time with its capabilities and its capacity to continue well into the future. But as we finally hit the golden years of our Minuteman III, we need to make a concerted effort to ensure that as our replacement to Minuteman III, the Sentinel, is brought online, that Minuteman III is gracefully replaced. And we accomplish this through the sustainment of all of our systems. So not only sustaining Minuteman III, but all of the support that goes into sustaining Minuteman III. So before I continue, I did want to give you a snapshot of where we are. And this is not just 20th Air Force. This graphic shows you all of Air Force Global Strike Command. So it shows you my bomber brothers and sisters as well. So for 20th Air Force, you have an ICBM wing up at Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. And if you are to visit one of our bases, that is always where I recommend people go. Because not only do you get to see a wing that supports ICBMs, but there is also a bomb wing up there for the B-52 mission. And that way you can see two legs of the triad in one place, and you get to brag that you went to Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, which is one of my favorite bases. It's incredible. So I have ICBMs up at Minot. We have ICBMs here at F.E. Warren in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Again, they are not just in Wyoming, though. Most of our ICBMs here at F.E. Warren are actually in Colorado and Nebraska. And then we do have a handful that are in Wyoming. And then our third ICBM base is at Malmstrom in Great Falls, Montana. And then, like I said, we also have Kirtland Air Force Base, which is predominantly located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But we also have a group that falls under the 377th Air Base Wing that is located out at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. And they do most of our ICBM testing. So when you see test launches of ICBMs, that is the group that runs those launches. And then you see the rest of the picture here is either Global Strike Command proper, or it is my brothers and sisters at 8th Air Force who oversee the bomber force. Where we operate in the northern tier of our country is an incredibly contested environment, and it's not contested because our adversaries are hanging out there, fighting our defenders. It's contested mostly because of the environment that we have to work in. So incredible amounts of snows. When those snows melt very quickly, there's flooding in which we have to protect our sites from water intrusion. Wind turbines are going up, it's great to have wind turbines, but we have to worry about them encroaching on our launch facilities and also hindering our helicopters' ability to do what they need to do. There's a lot of buildup in the oil fields, and there is a growing traffic because of all of this. So when we transport weapons from base out to the field, a lot of times we are driving through towns. We're driving through Great Falls, Montana, or Cheyenne, Wyoming. And that's a consideration that we just have to keep in mind while we're doing our business. All right, I'm going to show you a video. There is no sound, but when it's done, I can describe some of the things that you saw. But this is just a video of our operations in the ICBM business. So in that video, you saw all of our airmen. You saw civilians, you saw maintainers working on the systems and the computers. You saw defenders, helicopters flying around, launcher closure doors moving open so missiles could launch. You saw our operators, what we call turning keys, and I can talk about that during the Q&A. There's actually just one key and 3 switches. So you saw operators, doing their checklists, which are, of course, incredibly important in our mission, sticking with the checklist, turning keys, launching missiles, operating the system that we use to monitor our missiles and ensure that they are safe and that there's no maintenance problems with them. So you saw pretty much everything that we do in that video. And if anybody wants that, I can give you the link later. It's got a funky background song that you can dance to if you want, but just a cool video. All right, I'm going to move on to talking about sustainment in a little bit more detail. This slide is just a graphic of all of our systems in Global Strike Command. So we've got our bombers on there, we've got our air-launched cruise missiles, and then we've also got, from where I sit, our concerns for sustainment. So our missile, our weapon storage areas, our nuclear command and control infrastructure, so the lines that carry the information from the missiles to the operators or back to base, our helicopters, all of that is old technology, old infrastructure, and it all needs to be upgraded and modernized basically all at the same time, which you've been hearing about in the news. So not only are we modernizing our bomber force and our ICBM and all of the infrastructure and a lot of the buildings, but we're also doing the same thing on the Navy side. So it is a big bill. It is also incredibly necessary. In order to accomplish our mission of providing combat-ready forces, we do need to sustain our current weapon system that we've been tasked to operate until we can bring the modernized systems online. And it's not easy to sustain our aging system, and it's only becoming more challenging as we enter end of life, especially for the Minuteman III. And as with any large-scale revolutionary replacement, placing Sentinel is going to take years of effort to reach fruition. And throughout this transition, the missile will be replaced, as well as a full replacement and refurbishment of the support infrastructure and the command, control, and communication systems. The magnitude of this task is jaw-dropping, and it's going to take every one of us working our hardest to ensure that Minuteman III is put to rest in a responsible and effective way, complementing the onboarding of Sentinel. A lot of times we talk about when you bring a new aircraft online, we oftentimes have the luxury of sunsetting the previous aircraft first, getting it out of the way, bringing the new one in. But with our ICBM force, we can't do that. We need to have the same number of ICBMs operational as we bring on Sentinel and retire Minuteman III. So it's going to take some very creative, responsible, and thoughtful emplacement of Sentinel as we do this. In order to stretch Minuteman III to reach our Sentinel goals, we run a lot of sustainment programs and projects. Our software, which integrates all of our launch equipment, is continuously upgraded and improved, and we take feedback directly from the units and the airmen to ensure that our computers are always primed to perform. Additionally, we're working on programs for upgrading our weapon system delivery systems, with replacements currently being tested and fielded for our payload transporters and our transporter erectors, and I'll talk more about those in detail. This ensures that as we continue fielding a continuous ICBM presence, our infrastructure will not fall behind and sunset too early, and in fact can be extended into service with Sentinel. Additionally, we have units specifically designed to test our weapon systems, from survivability and hardness capabilities to complete launch tests and launch processing tests. We're able to sustain ourselves into the future by continuous monitoring for new and complex issues that develop with a system that is older than most of our service members. This effort has also encouraged us to think critically about our mission and come up with some creative ways to continue our sustained operations. For example, we completely overhauled our encryption systems with the ICBM cryptography upgrade increment 2, making our weapons exponentially safer and saving tens of thousands of man-hours for repair and security. This upgrade not only allowed us to streamline a very intensive process, but it's also ensured less wear and tear on our equipment, which prolongs Minuteman III life even further. Added to this are many component upgrades within our launch setters, which have aided in ensuring no equipment will fail prior to the end of the Minuteman III era. For example, we have upgraded very simple things like our printers that our operators need to use when they're out in the field, upgrading 3.5-inch floppy drives to more modern systems, upgrading access to comm satellites. So just across the board, lots of upgrades that we've been doing in order to sustain Minuteman III. We've also had to get creative with sustaining our aging parts, as many of our components that support Minuteman III are no longer produced like they were decades ago. And this has stretched our creative muscles, but we've integrated with all of our units to be able to utilize spare parts from different bases. In fact, in my own headquarters, we have some incredible maintainers who have been working tirelessly to ensure that all available parts are utilized in the most effective way possible. So one thing that we were not good at doing in Minuteman III, or we didn't really practice it, was what we call cannibalizing from one site to keep a different site online. So again, with New Start, we are limited to 400 launch facilities that have a booster in them, which means we have 50 that do not on any given day. And we were not harvesting parts from those 50 empty sites and using them to keep the other sites online. So now we actually have a process in place to do that, which our aircraft brothers and sisters are very skilled at doing. We are now doing. Sustaining Minuteman 3 decades after its original lifespan has definitely been challenging, and these challenges we know will only grow as the system ages further. However, due to the tireless work of our over 13,000 airmen that call ICBMs home, we're finding solutions to sustaining our system. So these charts you've probably seen before, and the versions I have here are a bit dated, but I always like to highlight why modernization is so important. And if you look at the slide on the right, it shows how great our nuclear stockpile used to be. So back in the 60s, over 30,000 weapons in our stockpile. And today we are under 4,000 weapons. And they're old, as you all know. And so each weapon and each delivery platform that holds or carries that weapon is ever more important than it was before. They are incredibly precious. And so we need to make sure that we're sustaining those until modernized platforms and modernized weapons are available. To understand the need for a weapon system that is roughly 45 years past its original sunset, we need to look at the world around us. Our adversaries have been watching us and have felt the effects of our nuclear deterrent. This has led them to adopt similar nuclear mechanisms as us and at an eye-opening rate. Russia has already modernized the majority of its nuclear arsenal, showcasing the need for continuous nuclear presence. Simultaneously, China is engaging in an aggressive nuclear buildup with a multitude of fielded nuclear warheads and an ever-expanding triad of delivery platforms. They're currently on track to add about 100 warheads per year. The simple truth is that the world that we live in is not the world of 1970, and in order to combat the power shifts occurring in our world today, we need to modernize and once again build a system for the future. However, the world has become more complex, space is more accessible than ever, and our systems are becoming faster and faster with breakthrough technologies. Integrating our best systems today will also require us to reinvigorate our command and control systems, which are extremely closely tied to our deterrent capability. Technological advancements and adversary capabilities continue to evolve. Without purposeful advancements in our own force, we risk losing pace with those threats. But our military is not unfamiliar with modernization efforts. In fact, the Air Force was born out of the need for upgrading U.S. capabilities. History tells us that maintaining a modernized force is critical to success, and it's been shown time and again during pivotal points in our nation's defense. In World War II, state-of-the-art bombers using innovative tactics were the key to crippling the enemy. And in the Cold War, overcoming modernization challenges with nuclear weapons and doctrine development led to the defeat of the Soviet Union. It's reassuring to know that we have done this before and to be fortunate enough to have precious successes to shape our decisions today. I'm excited to get to be a part of such an incredible time within the ICBM community and to work with all those who serve to face the challenges that modernization presents to us today. Today's modernization efforts have a significant impact on the operational force, and they play a crucial role. The DoD's modernization effort is critical in addressing emerging threats, allowing us to maintain a competitive advantage, as well as ensuring the readiness of the operational force. For the ICBM force, this effort is two-part. One being the sustainment and maintenance of the current Minuteman III fleet, and the other is the development of its replacement with the Sentinel program. But we know that this effort isn't just on the back of the DoD. The National Nuclear Security Administration plays a huge role in supporting the DoD's nuclear modernization efforts by ensuring the safety, security, and reliability of our nuclear warheads. Their warhead modernization programs are designed to provide improved accuracy and reliability, and their life extension programs are essential to extending the life of our existing warheads. The NNSA's investments in advanced simulation and computing improves the accuracy and efficiency of nuclear simulations, reducing the need for large-scale physical testing and saving us precious materials and platforms. Finally, the NNSA works closely with the DoD to integrate new warheads onto updated platforms and ensuring the current nuclear stockpile remains compatible. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about the modernization efforts that are currently underway in the Air Force, specifically within 20th Air Force. So I don't have a lot of cool pictures of the buildings that we're working on, but we are currently building a lot across our 3 ICBM bases. So we have weapons generation facilities that are being built. So those are the locations where we store weapons on the bases, where we maintain those weapons, and where we load those weapons onto our big white trucks to take them out to the field and back. Another thing that we're working on, a big military construction effort, is what's called the MH-139 Tactical Response Force Facility. So this is an infrastructure project that's designed to support the introduction of the new MH-139 helicopter, as well as our tactical response force, which are our defenders that will typically fly on that helicopter with the crew, and they will help safeguard weapons movements as well as be available to quickly respond if there is a security incident at any of our launch facilities or with any of our weapons or weapons movements. This facility is going to be a state-of-the-art infrastructure that's designed to support the base's security and response missions. And like I said, it's going to serve as a main operating base for the MH-139 Grey Wolf helicopter, as well as the Tactical Response Force defenders and their equipment. The weapons generation facility, I briefly mentioned that. So again, that is a facility that we are building not only at our ICBM bases, but our bomber bases are getting new weapons generation facilities as well. So those play a very vital role in the maintenance, refurbishment, upgrade, transport of our nation's nuclear warheads and associated systems. They provide a secure and controlled environment for the disassembly, inspection, repair, and reassembly of nuclear warheads. They support the entire life cycle of nuclear warheads from initial production to final disposal and are essential for maintaining the effectiveness and credibility of the U.S. nuclear deterrent. So now I'm going to get into a bit more detail. You can talk about the flashier parts of our modernization effort. I know you guys aren't too excited about printers, so we will talk about the MH-139 Grey Wolf. This is the replacement for our Vietnam-era fleet of UH-1N helicopters. It is a better platform to protect nuclear convoys and to respond quickly when needed throughout our expansive ICBM ranges in the northern tier of the country. It can fly faster, farther, higher, and carry more humans and equipment than our UH-1N. As of last month, we had 8 MH-139s delivered to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana and 1 to Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, where we will do training for this platform. Initial testing with security response force members and scenarios is already underway, and then it's being followed last week and this week with integration into what we call our nuclear convoy course. So we train not only our helicopter pilots and crews, but our defenders together, training them together at a nuclear convoy course. So how to run convoys of our warheads from our bases out to the field, to launch facilities and back, and how to do that safely and securely. This new helicopter is going to be really awesome. Something that I like to point out with the modernization program is that this helicopter serves as a great test bed of ideas and lessons learned as we delve deeper into Sentinel modernization. So we're pulling some of the lessons that we're learning with bringing on this helicopter into the Sentinel program. Our smart airmen work through a lot of snags that come with the new program, and thanks to their insights, our defenders, maintainers, and pilots are able to share lessons with the rest of our Air Force family to smooth out a lot of the issues that we could see with Sentinel. If you know anything about the ICBM business, you know that we love big white trucks. So these are some trucks that we are modernizing today to help ensure that we can sustain Minuteman III for the foreseeable future. So the truck in the upper left corner and bottom right corner is called a transporter erector. In the video, you probably saw that the trailer portion of that fully upright. That is the truck that carries the booster for the Minuteman III to and from the base. So there are times when we need to pull the boosters out of a launch facility, and that is the truck that trailer will erect, and it'll lower a booster or raise a booster. The ones that we have, our legacy versions, are very old, like many of our other systems. So we are currently working on a transporter erector replacement program to replace all of those trucks at our 3 ICBM bases. The other truck you see, the one that's in the center there, and it's also in the lower left and upper right, is called a payload transporter. That is the truck that will transport our nuclear payloads, so the reentry vehicle from the base to the field or from the field to the base. It can also transport other components that typically go on the top portion of the missile. So we are also undergoing a payload transporter replacement and have several of those already at our ICBM bases, and our airmen are learning the differences between those and the legacy versions. They're learning what it takes to operate those, how they're different, and what their capabilities are. So we're very excited about that. Another thing I don't have a picture of, but another modernization effort underway is the new ICBM fuse. That's a critical component of the Sentinel program. It's designed to replace the aging fuse system used in the Minuteman III, and it will provide improved accuracy, reliability, and safety features. If you're unaware, the fuse is responsible for arming and detonating the warhead at the optimal altitude and location. The new design is going to incorporate advanced technologies such as improved radar and infrared sensors, as well as enhanced computer algorithms. And it will also be designed to be more adaptable and flexible, allowing for easier integration with future warhead designs and improved compatibility with the Sentinel system. Additionally, the new fuse will incorporate advanced safety features to prevent unauthorized launch or detonation. The development of the new fuse is a key milestone in the Sentinel program, and its successful integration will be critical to ensuring the continued effectiveness and reliability of our U.S. nuclear deterrent. So these are some of the programs of the future. I'm not going to talk about any of the bomber initiatives. I will talk a little bit about Sentinel, but my disclaimer is that I'm not an official spokesperson for Sentinel. We have 2 gentlemen. If you have not had a chance to talk with them yet, I encourage you to do so. Major General Colin Connor is our Sentinel lead at Air Force Global Strike Command, and he works hand in hand with Brigadier General Buck Rogers at the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. So those 2 typically travel as a duo, and they speak to congressional members, HASC and SAS staffers, different groups. They do town halls out in our missile fields to answer questions to our local communities. They are truly the experts and spokespeople for the Sentinel program. So again, I won't talk about it too much, but I will talk about it a little bit. So Sentinel weapon system, as I said, is going to replace our legacy Minuteman III. It is critical to countering the pacing threat that we see in our world today and that we discussed earlier. So we need to do like our predecessors did and lean forward with this missile modernization program. Again, Minuteman III was designed for a 10-year lifespan, but its engineering has lasted decades, and it's incumbent upon us to now take the next step and create a system that can last through future upgrades. Sentinel will modernize the land-based leg of the nuclear triad through 2075, replacing the entire Minuteman fleet of operationally deployed missiles. And as I said, it will also replace a lot of our infrastructure to include launch facilities, launch centers, and the communication lines that go between those. Sentinel is going to have increased accuracy and extended range, enhanced security, and improved reliability to provide our country with modular, adaptable options to address unforeseen contingencies. The differences between Minuteman III and the Sentinel weapon system are as big as the differences between technology available in the 1960s and technology available today. We've learned so much as we've sustained Minuteman III, and rest assured that those lessons learned are going to carry into the design and implementation of Sentinel, so that the brave airmen who stand where we are today are given every tool for success that we have at our disposal. However, in order to ensure that we're providing the best possible resources to this project while balancing our current Minuteman III systems, we must go through some growing pains. Sentinel faces the same challenges that many major defense acquisition programs are facing. Macroeconomic factors, manpower challenges, inflationary effects, all those pose challenges for this program. Nevertheless, the Sentinel program's top priority is keeping the weapon system on a path to meet our nation's needs, and we can't accept anything less for the protection of our allies and our nation. You may have noticed that I keep talking about the people who support our mission. Anyone who knows me know how passionate I am about the people that I get to work with and how vital I see their contributions to our mission. I firmly believe that the most important aspect of every single one of these efforts, whether it's sustaining a Minuteman III or whether it's modernizing to Sentinel or a big white truck, if we don't have the right people to operate, maintain, secure, and defend these, then it's not going to matter. So that's why we need to be extremely intentional with how we develop our personnel. The modernization of weapon systems has a direct relation to the development of people and leaders, and that's a topic that requires careful consideration and thoughtfulness as it touches on matters of national security, technological advancement, and human development. As our weapon systems become more advanced, so do the skills and knowledge required to design, build, maintain, and operate them. This in turn drives the need for a highly trained and educated workforce, as well as leaders with the vision and expertise to make informed decisions about the use and deployment of these technologies. This means we need to invest in education and training programs to ensure that our personnel are equipped with the necessary knowledge and skills to meet the demands of the modern military. And it's not just engineers and technicians who need to be highly skilled. Effective leaders are also essential to the development and deployment of these advanced weapon systems. Leaders need to have a deep understanding of the technologies themselves, as well as the broader strategic and tactical implications of using them. They need to be skilled communicators, able to effectively relay complex concepts to their teams. So we must ask more of our members. As we modernize our buildings, equipment, vehicles, and missiles, we also must modernize our approach to our people. Professional training, leadership development, and deterrence theory must be in the minds of all our members. We must ensure that our members are given every opportunity to be developed into the ICBM leaders of tomorrow, who will be at the forefront of explaining and guiding decisions that affect every one of us. I can confidently say that we're ready for that effort and will continue being the best that we can be as we move into the future of our profession. So that was a lot. I talked about a lot of sustainment, some of the programs that we have underway, as well as the modernization efforts that we are looking forward to in the future. And I'm going to stop sharing so that y'all can look at my face. All right.
Okay. Stacy, thank you so much. That was extraordinary. There are a couple of questions. One I wanted to ask, and another question was, would you explain why you can't do another service life extension program as a substitute for Sentinel? And a related question is, when you use the word aging, what do you mean? That was a question in the chat function. And once you do that question, I have a couple more, and then there's a question also in the chat, which I'll share with you. But could you address that issue?
All right, sir. I will start with the aging question, and I'll give you some examples. So there are components, obviously this system was designed with a 10-year life, and it's not just the missile. I'll probably get smacked for saying this, but the missile is easy. Our country knows how to do missiles. It is everything else. It is the security. It is the fiber, well, not even fiber. It's the lines that travel around our country connecting our missiles to the operators and to the maintainers so that we can monitor them. All of that stuff uh, wasn't designed to last more than 10 years, but it has. And so it is aging. I would say it's aging pretty gracefully, but we are starting to now see problems with components that were never anticipated, like components corroding just because they have been out in the field for as long as they have with lots of snow or lots of rain or lots of wind. And so they're corroding and that just wasn't planned. And there were no replacements that are available. Like I said, a lot of these pieces of equipment, there's no supply line for them. So if we can't fix it, or steal it from another site, then it just doesn't exist and the site doesn't get fixed. So those are just an example of the aging problems. And why can't we do a service life extension? That topic has come up, as you are well aware, sir, but I don't know if the rest of the audience is, but that topic has come up a lot as we've discussed the Sentinel program. And what the nation has realized is that it would cost so much more to do a service life extension on Minuteman III than it would just to do the Sentinel program. So it is more effective to bring on Sentinel, and Sentinel brings on more capabilities than Minuteman III has in order to counter, deter our adversaries. So it is a better system. Like I said, better accuracy, range, better ability to maintain and defend it than what Minuteman III is. So it's just a better decision all the way around to bring on Sentinel rather than to do a life extension on Minuteman III.
Very good. I have a question on, and I don't mean to, this is a question that some people have been told that a missileer in a launch control center can launch a missile on their own authority. You may think it's a dumb question, but my understanding is you cannot launch a rocket unless the president gives a command, and you have a certain number of individuals have to turn the keys simultaneously. And if they tried to turn the keys without a presidential authority, nothing's going to happen, but they can, I don't think it's classified that they can be shut down. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And I love that question because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about they'll say like, oh, your ICBM force is on hair trigger alert, and it makes it sound like some rogue airman can just launch a missile, and that is so far from the truth. So yes, sir, like you said, not only do you need, there's specific information that the operators need to get from messages that come from the president. So they need that information, first of all. And second of all, to launch a missile, you need 4 human beings to agree that the message they got is truly from the president. They need to understand what it's telling them to do, and they all 4 need to agree. Now, if a rogue person did try to launch a missile, you're right, all the other operators would see indications of that, and they would stop it, and then they would also call some cops to come figure out what's going on with that operator and what it is that they're doing. But yes, one operator, even 2 operators by themselves, they cannot launch a missile. You need at least 4. And again, they do need specific information that comes from the president, through Stratcom or through the Joint Staff to them in order to prove that it's a real message and tell them what to do.
Right. My next question has to do with, you were previously commander in Minot. You also were commander in Cheyenne at the F.E. Warren for the squad there. You've now come back. Compared to when you were at Minot and Cheyenne, what has surprised you about the current force that you took over? Because it was a number of years in between. And it is a force that if you look at it, it's now 55 years old and going to be 65 plus or minus a few years when we gracefully exit and put in Sentinel. So what has surprised you about the force? And then I'd like to turn it over to my Vice President Curtis if he has a question. And because I've been looking in the chat function, I think we got most of the questions. Is your presentation was just superb, Stacy. Thank you. So anyway, that's my question with respect to how have you been surprised?
Yes, sir. So when I left Minot, it was 2019. And then when I came back here to, when I left Minot in 2017, then I came to Cheyenne and I left here in 2019. When I came back here, it was 2023. So your ICBM bases had gone through COVID during that time. And they had to do some really extreme things because obviously during COVID, you can't stop pulling missile alert. We still had to have operators and maintainers
Right.
and defenders and chefs, and all the things still needed to happen. So they had to do some creative deployment schedules. So instead of operators being underground for 24 hours at a time, they would send double the amount of operators out to the field, and they would stay out there for a week. And they would rotate between being underground and above ground with their counterparts. So they did some really unique things, and they learned a lot of lessons about what might work better for how we do our mission, how to better send people to the field, how to better do training, how to better, defend the force. Like, how many people does that actually take? How many people do we need? So they did learn a lot of lessons, a lot of different ways of training. I will say, so that wasn't really a surprise. I knew that was happening, but I didn't know all the lessons we were going to learn from that. So that was all good stuff that we are now incorporating into all of our guidance. Like if somebody learned a best practice during those COVID years, then we want to incorporate it into our guidance so it doesn't get lost. One thing that always drives me insane is when I'll say older people, previous missileers who are now retired, complain about our force. And kids these days, they just don't get it. If you actually go to visit an ICBM base and you talk to a 20-year-old who is doing something with a warhead, he is maintaining a warhead, or if you talk to a 23 or 24-year-old missileer who's out in the field, you are blown away with how much they understand their mission, how proud they are about their mission, and just how eloquent they are about explaining what it is they do for our nation. It is inspiring. And so anytime someone complains about this generation, they don't talk to this generation, because if they did, they wouldn't worry about it at all. They're incredible.
I have one other question, Kurt, before I wanted to do a shout out to Anya Fink, who she does really some extraordinary research in this ICBM and nuclear business. And she asked a question about, could you talk about the challenges of simultaneously operating Minuteman III and Sentinel while you're taking one out and putting one in?
Yes. So like I said, we don't have the luxury of getting rid of 100 or 150 missiles at a base and just not having the numbers that we need to have to support STRATCOM. And so we're going to have to figure out, and Global Strike Command and the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center are leads on this. We'll have to figure out, how do you manage pulling boosters out of sites and in placing Sentinel at the same time with roughly the same number of human beings doing this. And we'll have to make decisions like, are operators going to be certified in both systems, which means double the amount of training, double the amount of evaluations, or are we going to have a Sentinel force and an ICBM force, and actually have a bubble of personnel, like grow the numbers of personnel and then shrink them back down. It's nice that with New Start, we have 50 empty launch facilities. So that gives us some, I would call it wiggle room, to make some decisions. Also, with the expiration of New START, hopefully many of you know, Minuteman III can hold between 1 and 3 warheads on it. So there might be some room there for decisions. You know, maybe they're not all going to just have 1 warhead. Maybe some of them will have 2. Maybe some will have 3. You know, those are going to have to be decisions that are made with STRATCOM, Joint Staff, probably presidential authorization and direction. So there's some space for us to come up with, creative's probably not the best word, but smart, efficient ways of bringing in Sentinel while sustaining the right number of systems to support STRATCOM's targeting needs.
Okay, Curtis, over to you, sir. And then that'll be the last question. Want to thank you all for participating, and in particular, General, what a fabulous job you did. Kurt, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Peter. And General Huser, thank you so much for being here on behalf of the National Institute for Deterrence Studies. So glad to get your perspective on all of this, and then in our third leg of the triad. Recently, there was an article that was put out last March 7th timeframe from the Air Force, saying that the average fighter readiness rate for fighter aircraft was about 62%. Yep. And I think the STRATCOM commander noted that you all have a 98% readiness rate. So I want to congratulate you for that. It's probably the highest in the Air Force, maybe in all of DoD. And I think that is something to be extremely proud of, as well as understanding how that impacts all of the other missions that go on in the DoD. I wanted to ask, I guess my final question is a Sentinel-related question, and I realize it might be somewhat limited as to how you can answer this. I understand that the Sentinel testing schedule has been delayed a little bit, and there's been much about the efficacy of the Sentinel and how accurate it will be and all these things. Yeah, we've not really physically fired one off, right? We haven't really tested one. And so my question to you is as a commander, have you thought about the impact here if when we finally do get to test this thing, which I think is probably scheduled for next year, what happens if it fails? What are we going to do? What credibility message are we sending to the world if we have a failure? And is a fear of failure institutionally going to cause some sort of paralysis and delay in what needs to happen, which is to get a test?
So I love that. I used to work for General Hyten, and those of you who know General Hyten, he's just an incredible person. And he used to talk about our fear of failure and how we need to get over that, because we can't move faster, and we constantly talk about why can't we move as fast as we used to. Well, if you're not okay with failing, you're not going to be able to move faster. I will only talk about me personally. If we have a failure, that does not concern me, because, and you all know this, you learn so much from a failure, so much. And I know this is offensive to say, but again, the missile part is easy, and we know how to build missiles, and we know how to fail when we build missiles, and learn from it and make them better and turn quickly and test again. Like, we know how to do that. So I know me personally, I won't be excited. I know people will get excited, and so we'll just have to have a good communication strategy, which I'm sure they're thinking about in the event that something like that were to happen.
We'll need to warm up the PAOs.
Yeah, Curtis, let me interject and just say that prior to President John F. Kennedy announcing that we were going to the moon, the rocket that was going to carry them to the moon failed in 13 consecutive tests. And yet the president said, we are going to the moon. And at the time, it was interesting. I went back and looked at some of the press coverage. It was, hey, that's a great idea, we'll figure it out. As opposed to, oh, you can't go there because these rockets haven't worked. And it was true that we had 13 consecutive test flights, and they all failed. And again, that was was kind of at the early part of the missile age. So again, thank you, Kurt, for that question. And General, I can't tell you how much I want to thank you for an extraordinary presentation. I look forward to seeing you in Louisiana, because I know you're going to join us there. Hopefully the travel restrictions will be lifted. And again, thank Kimberly for all your organizational skills and logistics and co-hosting this with me. And again, want to thank our people. We did have over 50 people actually came on out of the 80 that were registered, which I think is a tribute to you, General. And again, thank you to everybody who showed up, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Have a wonderful Good Friday and a good Easter, and be safe. And again, General, thanks to you and your staff and your wonderful people out there in 20th Air Force. I hope to see you soon, at least in a couple of months when I go out to see the chamber out there. My hope is, and Wyoming's a great place because there's a hat store that I always have to go pick up a Stetson. So anyway, thank you, General.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for everyone being here, and have a great day.